All right, Matt, you go ahead.
All right. So in 2008, voters narrowly approved Proposition 1A, which would allow California to sell almost $10 billion in bonds to fund a high-speed rail project linking Southern and Northern California. Unfortunately, things have changed since 2008, and a train system is the last thing California should be worried about. Our claim is that Proposition 1A should be repealed and high-speed rail in California should be abandoned. We will demonstrate this change in policy is necessary by showing you some discrepancies between estimates the voters were told in 2008 in terms of cost, planning, and efficiency, how the California budget crisis is still ongoing and we can't afford new and unnecessary projects, and finally the impacts that high-speed rail development could have on infrastructure that's already in place and how that infrastructure makes it unnecessary. So as I said, my first claim is that voters were misled when they voted in favor of Proposition 1A. According to the California High-Speed Rail Commission, construction cost of the core rail system would be around $30 billion. That figure was in 1999. In 2008, it rose $10 billion to $40 billion, and finally to $45 billion in 2008. Unfortunately, this figure is grossly underestimated. According to a study by the Reason Foundation, which estimates the total project can end up costing upwards of $80 billion in capital. In fact, with Proposition 1A, there is no guarantee that the high-speed rail project would even be built. It is entirely possible that billions of dollars will go to waste. In order for the project to be efficient, there needs to be tens of millions of riders annually. In keeping with the fluctuating estimated cost of the project, the High-Speed Rail Authority has recently amended its ridership and ticket price estimates also. 3 months ago, the Rail Authority estimated 55 million riders a year between San Francisco and Los Angeles by the year 2030 at a ticket price of $55 each way. That estimate was recently changed to 41 million riders a year and a ticket price of $105 each way. That is a 90% increase from 3 months ago. Additionally, these numbers are optimistic at best. According to a recent report by the California Legislative Analyst's Office, is that the High-Speed Rail Authority failed to adequately consider what would happen if few people ride the new trains, opening a potentially huge funding gap. Eric Thompson, a fiscal and policy analyst for the office, called the business plan incomplete and inappropriate for a project of this magnitude. Additionally, if the rail system fails to draw 41 million riders a year, Proposition 1A prohibits public funding from being spent on operating costs. So, if there are 41 million riders a year, the rail system shuts down and it goes empty. Additionally, there's the prospect of the train not going nearly as fast and being as efficient as proposed. According to an article from the Riverside-based Press Enterprise, cities are fighting to be included as stops in the rail project. Long expansive tracks are needed for a high-speed rail train to operate at optimum speed. Due to fighting among cities, more stops are being included, which would result in slower train speeds. An example of this happening would be Excella, the United States' only high-speed train which runs between Washington, D.C. and Boston. While it is capable of speeds of 150 miles an hour, it rarely reaches the speed due to track and stop constraints. The average speed of the Excella train along its route is only 70 miles an hour, with a full trip from D.C. to Boston taking an average of 6.5 hours. Or, instead of taking Excella, you could take, for example, this Excella train 2158 on March 10th, which will take 6 hours 32 minutes from Washington to Boston, leaving at 9 a.m. for $149 a person. Or, you could take JetBlue Flight 1254 from Washington to Dulles at 9:30 a.m. and arriving in Boston 1 hour and 29 minutes later for the much lower cost of $84 tax inclusive. Which leads me to my next point is that the high-speed rail project really isn't in keeping with the state budget crisis going on. Proposition 1A allowed the state to sell $10 billion in bonds. If you're not familiar with bonds, they're basically loans that the government sells to investors. Unfortunately, California has the lowest bond rating of any state, meaning you have a larger chance of losing your money by buying a bond from the state of California. To compensate for this, the state must offer higher interest payments to entice investors. According to smartvoter.org, the state needs to pay $9.94 billion in interest alone on the bonds for the rail system. So basically, double the price of the investment. From a state that only a few months ago was giving out IOUs, taking out loans that they have to pay incredible interest on is plainly irresponsible. By having to make payments on bonds, the state is diverting funds from vital programs such as schools, emergency first services, public safety, and other various social services. The summer before last, I was an intern in the state assembly for Assemblyman Roger Nilo during the height of the budget crisis. As the Assemblyman was vice chairman of the budget committee, There were ads targeting him, and our offices got a lot of calls with people asking, what are going to happen to my services? Why am I not getting checks? But not once did I get a call saying, hey, we should have a new train. So, this leads me to my final point that the transportation infrastructure is already in place in California for interstate transit. As a premier United Mileage Plus member, meaning I flew 25,000 miles on that airline in 2009, I'm likely to be a Southwest A-list member, meaning I flew 32 flights on that airline in 1 year. I know a little bit about transportation in California, particularly now that I live in Pomona and I commute between Northern California between 2 to 3 weekends a month. If any of you have seen Up in the Air, I'm an aspiring Ryan Bingham. On March 10th, there will be 172 flights from the 5 commercial LA and Orange County to the 3 airports of the Bay Area, according to published domestic airline schedules. If you were to include return flights and all scheduled departures to destinations within the state of California, there are easily over 500 flights daily on an average weekday. With all these flights, the competition is fierce, providing commuters with efficient and cheap air travel. On my search for March 10th, most flights between LA and Orange County to the Bay Area were in the range of $49 to $69 each way. Needless to say, this is much cheaper than the current and best estimates for high-speed rail of $105 each way. Besides being about half the price, it's approximately half the travel time. According to the High-Speed Rail Authority, a trip from LA to San Francisco Airport would take 2 hours and 27 minutes. A flight from LAX to SFO on average is 1 hour 20 minutes gate to gate. Additionally, this puts the state in competition with private industry, which could drive the fragile airlines already out of business. So I also had the opportunity to ask Assembly Transportation Committee member Assemblyman Nilo, the one I work for comment on the issue, and I think he sums it up nicely. High-speed rail is a flawed project built on flawed premise and lacks foundation to boot. With all the political battles over stops in the valley, it will likely never be able to operate as a true high-speed train. Almost everybody but those blinded by some romantic notion of the concept know that the current $40 billion cost estimate is grossly short of a realistic mark. And the foundation of the fledgling enterprise is a wholly inadequate business plan that is more hopeful aspiration than it is hard-nosed assessment. Add to that an already excessive debt load for our state, and it becomes the equivalent of a debt-loaded middle-income family trying to get a loan to finance $1 million yacht. Thank you.